Joining us now, our Tuesday regular from the Province and Post Media, our dear friend, Mr. Patrick Johnston. How are you?
It's snotty, Matthew.
Yeah, so I've heard.
Thank
you
goodness
stay away.
We're virtual.
You stay quarantined there.
Don't have kids, Matt.
Yeah.
It's that time of year. Anyway.
Hey, get a flu shot, Patrick.
I did.
Oh, did you? Oh, boy.
That's why he's able to chat with us.
Maybe that's it.
Maybe he'd be
exactly.
in bed.
There you go.
Exactly.
You were telling me before we started here you liked Roberto Luongo's Hall of Fame speech best.
Well, tell a story, and that's what he did. And those are the best ones. And he brought you, he's a smart guy. He knows. I mean, they're all those Canucks that were there, the Steens and him, are all smart guys. But that stood out to me, and in a ceremony that has this sort of stayed the word. It's kind of you guys could have some fun. But it was sort of, there were parts of it I was just like, oh, come on, hockey. Like, let's have some fun. Like,
it's everything but the sign of the cross. They take it so seriously.
Oh, boy, guys, but you're barking up the wrong tree here. Yeah, that will be the last ceremony to get unstuffy.
No, anyway, it was nice. I liked, him being surprised by Hasek was such a great moment. And that sort of, let's remind that these guys are fans too. That he was one of his heroes. I mean, he probably would have. If Grant Fuhr had come out, I don't know if he'd been able to get on the stage, but it was pure emotion. It was great. And he told this really nice story. I don't know how much he winged it, but he certainly knew what he was going to do and got through it and finished thanking his wife, which was the smart move. Yeah.
Well, he told several stories. I mean, there were terrific stories there about growing up in Montreal's Italian neighborhood, and of course, how he met Gina at the Florida pizzeria that Scott Levy introduced him to. I also thought the comments to Henrik and Danny off the top, and looking straight at them too, there in the front row, that was pretty meaningful. That was pretty emotional when he just basically bore his soul about what Hank and Danny meant to him.
Yeah. And it was such a reminder, and going back to the BX thing of how tight that group was, how much that group pushed each other, how empowered they felt. I mean, they talked a lot about that. I did a little story on Luongo's last week on his Twitter. Basically, it ended up being, but it was also about leadership. And I talked to Mike Gillis about that era and being him captain, and the fact that all those guys said he was the guy that pushed them. He was the one who was the most passionate. And it was obviously stands in juxtaposition to the current team and all that kind of ails them and in terms of their, sort of the sense we have of, it's not this is a team that hates each other, but that there's sort of a lack of drive between each other, I think is the perception we're getting. And that team was so on the same page about what they needed to do, what they needed from above, because that was something that Mike mentioned to me, was that how the players need to feel the confidence to go to the management and say, here's what's going on, here's what we need to do, in terms of how the roster's shaking out, things like that. Just feeling like there's a coherent level direction, that everyone's pulling on the same rope, that there's a clear plan here, there's a clear path. And of course,
I don't know that they were best of friends, but they got along, and they knew exactly what the goal was together, and they were professional in that room. And we don't know exactly the details of the current squad, but it's not that. It's not all of that. And if it is, it's at a very different level. As much as we, I think yesterday were lamenting the difference in skill of the two teams, looking back, that's what the speeches did for me, is they made me lament the loss of a cohesive unit, on and off the ice.
And that's a challenging thing. And, you get a sense that these guys like Bruce, they respect Bruce. I think a lot about, before he worked for the Canucks, I did a media thing with Chris Higgins once, and he made a comment about, basically players have to believe 90% of what the coach says. Yeah. And so I had a sense of who he was talking about in terms of not being able to do that. But this was very much a group that no matter what, they believed in what they were hearing from the top. They believed in what they were hearing from each other, in terms of commitment. Sure, you want to believe the coach, but you need to believe everybody. And no matter whether, you're spending time with them away from the rink or not, the fact that the Sedins invited, say like Ryan Kessler, someone that we perhaps suspect that they weren't very close with, to their retirement ceremony, and have mentioned time and again as being a key component of that team, is such a reminder of exactly that in the end, you've got to pull on the same rope. You've got to be dedicated to your craft. You got to be, as the Sedin says, you got to become more than just the good players you already were. You need to become great. That's so much of the story there, too.
PJ, the Twins are still there. The Twins are still there. Chris Higgins is still there. Does it shock you then that they haven't been able to, influence the group at all, but more probably, B, advise Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin on who should be here, who shouldn't be, what's working, what's not? Like, I'm a little bit sad that we haven't seen maybe some guidance from them on this front.
Well, first of all, Higgins, that's not his job, right? Like, he's a development guy. Like, he's going to watch. Like, in fact, I haven't even seen him at games this year. Like, you used to see him. So I think he's out touring the countryside at this point, which is what you want him to be doing. The Sedins are new in this role, right? Like, I have no doubt that they are sharing their thoughts and feelings about what needs to happen, or what's going on, or what they're seeing or what they're not seeing. And the fact that they are showing up now at Canucks practices, working with players. In the end, it's not an overnight thing. Like, you can't just snap your fingers and say, okay, now we get it. There's a dedication. And, in the end, it's also that's the horse to water thing, right? Like, sometimes you can't just make a team become a team just because they show up. There are ingredients there that I think we're starting to, I think we suspect this team just doesn't have. And I think that's among many things. One, as we've said, someone pointed out, and someone pointed out on Twitter, and I mentioned it in my story, was after the Boston game. The Canucks have had one game this year where they've given up fewer than 3 goals. And that's not a team unity question. That's a pure competency question. And yes, scoring is up around the league, but in the end, they're not playing well enough defensively. And if you're not going to play well enough defensively, you don't have a hope. They scored 2 power play goals, and then they gave up 2 power play goals and a 4-on-4 goal. And those are all the details. And that's, to me, there's offensive talent. We know that. But it is forever the problem is that the talent defensively is not there. And it, as much as anything, it may not be coordinated very well, as Jim Rutherford seems to be arguing. But I think at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is it's just not good enough. And that's the thing that continues to baffle, because it's just like they could have made some changes. I think they let perfect be the enemy of the good this summer and didn't make changes that they could have made. And now here we are.
Well said. Love that turn of phrase. Perfect, the enemy of good.
Yeah.
Is this season already lost, or is the weakness of the Western Conference going to allow them to stick around here if they can win some games soon at 4-9-3?
I was just mapping out sort of the next month or so. Kuz and I have to sort of figure out what days we're on and we're off. And obviously he's been on the road and he's coming back. I was just kind of looking at everything and just going, wow, they do have a lot of these Western Conference games coming up, and those games are going to matter. They've got Vegas twice next week. They've got San Jose. Like, those are games that, obviously Vegas is leading the division is 13-3. But those are big games. San Jose is a bad team, and the Canucks are we're supposed to be better than them. And, that's a next week's road trip. They're all big road trips. It's American Thanksgiving next week. I asked Boudreau about that before they went on this road trip, which they're now at best going to finish at 2-3. He's like, we needed to go 3-2. And so they're just falling further and further behind. It is just hard to see, unless they have a miraculous snap of the fingers and they beat Buffalo and they beat LA on Friday, and then they beat Vegas, and then they beat Colorado, and then they beat Vegas again. Like it's kind of, that's it. Unless they go on a run this week, that's it. And I just have a hard time seeing them do that. They're giving up too many goals. And for all the kind of nice things they might be doing on the power play, there's just too many other bad things happening.
Are you of the opinion that now that we're through Hall of Fame weekend and after tonight, Boudreau is in peril? It could be an any day, any hour situation now, or do you think they'll be a little more patient than that?
I think certainly the question is there. As I've said, I'm not sure changing the coach actually changes anything other than to give Bruce the mercy kill. But he loves coaching so much that I find myself wondering, like, this must be terrible for him. Like, he's been a winning guy all the way through.
Yeah.
And this just stinks. And
he looked wrecked after the last game. Just looked like.
Yeah, he's starting to wear it now. You're starting to hear it now. I think he knows the score here. I think he knows that he's not management's guy. He's taking their slings and arrows, and the players are unresponsive. So so I think there's that case to be had, and you can hand it over to Mike Yeo or whoever, and cruise through the rest of the season. I mean, I know Rick's been talking about Rick Tocchet. There's other names out there, I guess, but changing the coach right now, if you are going to make the decision, which finally needs to happen, which is you need to blow this up and start going in a different direction, doing whatever you can to reorient this lineup. I mean, sure, if the coach you think is going to be the guy going forward is available, get him. But given how to be honest, how meticulous they claim to be in their decision making, unless if that guy is more likely to be available in the summer, I could see them going the interim route for now. But that's more me just guessing. But I do think there certainly is discussion. There's no doubt. I mean, it's obvious. But certainly based on what I've heard and what I've talked to, it's absolutely a conversation that's happening.
Do you think the Babcock scenario, which I outlined yesterday, where he was effectively fired on the weekend but was allowed to coach one more game because of Hall of Fame, do you think there's a chance that plays out, that win or lose? He's gone
sure. I've had that thought. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, after the game on Sunday, I sort of mapped it out, and I thought, well, I made the joke, but I'm like, that is a commercial flight you're having to buy to send him home. But I mean, Harrisburg, there's direct flights from Boston to Harrisburg. There are no direct flights from Buffalo to Harrisburg. However, it is a 5-hour drive.
Yeah, you could drive. Yeah.
So, although there's supposed to be a huge snowstorm coming in. So, anyway, I mean, that's certainly entered my mind. In the end, you got to get through this. We know that the NHL does not like, the Hall of Fame is not quite the same as the NHL, obviously, but in general, the NHL does not like big events getting stomped on by news. And certainly with 3 Vancouver Canucks going into the Hall of Fame, if they had fired their coach yesterday, that would have been not the kind of thing that the league's powers that be would have appreciated, because it would have just been the most bizarre storyline.
Yeah.
So, I totally see that happening, for sure.
Is this the last NHL chance for Will Lockwood, who gets called up after the Studnicka injury? It's a lower body one. He's going to IR.
I guess. I mean, he hasn't done all that much. He skates fast, but we've seen a lot of guys who skate fast come and go. I remember talking to Ryan Johnston about him. I think it was last season, and Ryan really being convinced that this kid, he's not obviously, excuse me, he's not obviously the offensive wizard, never has been, but to stay in the league, you have to be able to contribute, even if you are in a checking role. And Ryan was convinced that this kid has it. But we just haven't seen that. That is, for all the frustrations people may feel about Dakota Joshua, in the end, that guy in limited ice time gets scoring chances, and he turns pucks over behind the net. And, he kind of does that role that you expect him to play. And we haven't, I don't think I've ever, we've seen a few nice hits from Lockwood, I think, but I haven't really seen him get his nose on top of the crease the way a guy like Joshua does. And that is how you're going to make it, in that role. So it's kind of, you got to show it. I mean, I have no doubt, given the sort of state of the lineup and who else is available in Abbotsford, that we'll see him probably again this season. But it's very, this is kind of now. It's like, let's see. I mean, certainly this season is.
I wonder if the injuries for Lockwood have messed with his head a little bit, because he used to be a whirling dervish like, you couldn't stop him. You actually wanted him to slow down and stop being reckless. And I wonder if a couple of catastrophic injuries have sort of taught him, I have to play more in control. I can't be that shit disturber anymore. Because, at the World Junior Tournament, my God, he was everywhere in those couple of games before he got injured. And even in Michigan too, he was amazing.
Well, you mentioned that, exactly, getting hurt in that World Juniors. And after that, I remember a few people saying to me, I don't think it's going to happen. Like, he just can't. But, it was shoulders, there was a knee issue, like, between all that, it just wasn't going to happen. I mean, this is the thing that is hard, I think, for most people to recognize, because most of us don't do jobs where our bodies are everything. Yeah. But every time you get hurt, you are never going to be as healthy as you were before that. That's just it. That is literal wear and tear. You can repair your shoulder, you can repair your knee, but it is not going to be the same as it was. It is now 98% or whatever. And sometimes those 2%, that is the difference. And so you hope that's not the story. You hope that everyone makes it, but at the end of the day, like, you got to be more than just fast and hitting a guy once in a while to stick in this league.
You do. You rest up, buddy. I'm not sure what your tonic is for fighting the cold. I like the lemon, honey, ginger roots, all of that in some sort of tea-like potion, and we'll catch up next Tuesday. Thank you,
Take
Patrick.
care, guys.